now the MDC has finally filed its constitutional court application, which is challenging the outcome of Zimbabwe's presidential elections. In the studio with me to discuss is Acie Lumumba. He is a Zanu strategist, as well as Tino Mambeu, who is an independent political analyst. Let me begin perhaps with you, Acie. From your perspective, is this a political gimmick, given we know the inauguration had been set for Sunday? I want to know at the end of the interview if indeed it's still going to go ahead, or you think genuinely perhaps the MDC needed time to gather the information it needed?
Well, I think what this is a demonstration that we have strong institutional bodies in the country. We have a law, and the law allows for MDC or anyone who feels the results announced need to be challenged to be contested through the Constitutional Court. They were given up until today at 4 p.m. The MDC has done that. So this is the law at work. This is democracy at work. I think there's nothing breaking news about it. It's exactly what we expected. And you know why we expected it?
Why?
Because every single election of the last 24 months, there's been 34 elections across the world. 19 of those 34 elections have resulted in exactly the same way, where the person who loses the election says, no, I couldn't have possibly lost. We must go to court because the only way this election is free and fair is if I win.
Okay. From your perspective, Tino, watching this from outside?
Well, it's neither here or there. We have spoken about the process leading to elections, and we cried for and said that the electoral playing field was not level and it needed to be sorted out. I think you would have seen massive demonstrations that were carried out in Harare by the opposition. They were speaking to the very same fact that this process has got to be checked. Mm-hmm. And when you go into elections with a process that is flawed, you should obviously expect a fraudulent or a flawed result. This is where we are now, and fortunately, the MDC has got a very qualified people to look into the matter and try to present hard evidence. And they have said that they've got embarrassingly hard evidence that they are going to present in the courts, and it will be up to the courts to decide whether they annul the election or whether they give victory to the MDC Alliance, as they've claimed that they really have won the election.
Is this political gimmick, do you think, the amount of time that the MDC has taken? Because we knew this was open from Monday, didn't we?
There has not been any political gimmick. When you approach courts, you have got to make sure that your argument is technically and legally sound. And they have taken their time to put together evidence. Remember, the allegations that they bring about is that this rigging is so massive. And when it is so massive to that extent, you've got to narrow it down and be able to explain to the judges why do you think that this is not fair. And believe you me, they are only going to be focusing on the figures that ZEC has provided, tabulating those results, and they've seen a lot of errors that really compromise the result. And I think it is a fair game.
Yeah. Acie, from your perspective, so we have got this challenge coming through at the hour that it has come. You have said it's affirmation of the strength of the country institutions. Mm-hmm. So what happens now? Does the inauguration get stopped?
So the moment the court announces or the court qualifies that they've accepted the petition, first of all, the inauguration is stayed, which means there will be no inauguration on Sunday. But within the next 14 days, the court must do one of two things. The bench will sit. The first thing the court must do is they must ascertain that do they give validity to this petition. If they do, then that means the court must make a ruling based on that. If they don't give validity to it, they'll chuck it out and the president will be inaugurated within 48 hours post that. So the legal process that happens between now and within the next 14 days, somewhere within, it could be tomorrow, but anywhere within the next 14 days, the legal process now is the court must make must ascertain, is there a case or is there no case?
What do we know so far?
So what we know so far is that there is 25 respondents to the matter. We know that MDC Alliance has asked all the presidential candidates to come in as respondents. Tino is right. They will be focusing a lot on the figures that MDC has produced, but they're now staying away from the narrative which they had sold initially. And initially their narrative was, we have evidence in the form of V11 forms. They don't. So they're not going to use that anymore. They're going to try plan B. This is what MDC does. If they can't find SP ritual theory, they'll find a magical theory or a theory from Mars. Something will come up that they can use. But the reality of the matter is precedent has shown us, even in the last election or the one before that, they've done this. It's not the first time they're doing it. They do it every single election, and the result will absolutely always be the same. The country must move on.
Tino, listening to him and saying that this has been done before and the outcome has been the same, does that give you confidence that the legal authorities will apply their minds and that we are likely to get a judgment that is credible and that is based on the evidence before the courts?
There are two critical elements of judgment here. The first one is in the minds of the people, the public opinion. The MDC has got a duty to demonstrate to its supporters and the international community, Africa and SADC, that they've got a reasonable case. Now, whether the court, the Constitutional Court takes it or not is on another level. But you've got to demonstrate to everybody that is concerned about the Zimbabwean situation that we have got a reasonable case and have got reasonable evidence. That is why you have seen that they've engaged the services of Mr. Dalimpofu, Mr. Tembeka Kaitobi from South Africa to try and give, as best as they can, because they really understand the amount of evidence. So it now remains to be seen whether the courts are really captured. As we will remember that yesterday Mr. Mnangagwa said he managed to influence the courts to get to let go of Mr. Tendai Biti via bail. So that also speaks to a judiciary that might be captured to a certain extent. So let them bring out the evidence, and the evidence will speak for itself. Whether the judges are sober enough to accept the evidence and nullify the election or give a ruling that is favorable to the alliance, that we will wait to see.
You watched the election.
Yes.
What did you make of it?
The election was shambolic. It was neither free nor fair. It was not credible. However, the people seem to have voted vehemently for the opposition MDC Alliance in terms of the presidential poll.
How do you know that?
The evidence that is available at hand, that has been collated, that has been tabulated by the MDC Alliance, points to a very, very good chance of Mr. Chamisa having won the election.
I'm seeing him shaking his head.
It's completely outrageous. So in most countries, including the countries the MDC looks up to, the way you know how you performed in an election before the announcement of the result is through exit polls. Every single exit poll carried out in Zimbabwe, including from agencies that are more lenient to the opposition, have said Emmerson Mnangagwa was going to win. They've differed on the margins. They've differed on how close Nelson Chamisa was. But there's not a single exit poll that said Nelson Chamisa was actually the clear winner. Now, if you listen to the argument by Tendai Biti on the 29th of July, Tendai Biti said, we know we won, because you saw the rallies we pulled out. You saw the crowds that came out to our rallies. Surely, if we were ever marking success or we're ever marking support based on that, there's not a single rally MDC has had that Zanu PF hasn't doubled outside of Harare.
Sure. So what does Zanu PF do now? Because you have got this other process going through, so perhaps the courts will come and pronounce, and whatever decision they arrive at. But if it comes and it affirms the Zanu PF victory, what does Zanu PF do? Does it simply go ahead and govern?
Well, the most important thing President Emmerson Mnangagwa needs to focus on is he is the president in waiting right now. And he has to focus on those duties right now. The second most important thing the president has to do is he has to manage the country while we're going through this. He has to respect the processes, step away from it, but start thinking about forming government, start thinking about putting a cabinet together, because the end result is the same. Whether we go to a new election or we don't, President Emmerson Mnangagwa will still be the one running the country, because the elections, which is the numbers that matters the most, have proven him to be the victor.
Is there room for Mnangagwa here to come in and be the magnanimous victor and say, actually, guys, yes, we had our differences, we went and campaigned on different platforms. The bigger picture is that we've got to get this country growing again?
What is evident here is that against all backgrounds, you could say the election has been rigged. You could say that the election has not been rigged. What is very evident is that Mr. Mnangagwa, he has got 49.2% of the population that does not believe in his leadership. That is something to really think about as he goes to bed each and every night. But at the end of the day, I think he would want to put credence to what he said yesterday when he was addressing, his party MPs and all that. He said, I know that amongst you, there are people that encouraged voters to vote against me. So what that tells you is that there are people in Zanu PF that do not really believe in his leadership. And he said he's going to be going after them and making sure that they I do not know what he's going to do to them. But at the end of the day, he's worried that people have encouraged a boycott for the presidential vote. That is why he has got about probably 50% and his party getting 73%. Well, coming back to the opinion polls, they've always said that Mr. Mnangagwa, the last one from Afrobarometer, it says that he was leading Mr. Chamisa by 3%, that the last one that they did. So it really showed Mr. Chamisa surging in support. And then again, the exit polls that he makes mention of, they do not really present the opinion of the voters. And at the end of the exit polls, they were predicting Mr. Mnangagwa winning with 73%, but we saw the different, and it was obvious.
The debate must continue, of course, and of course the courts must pronounce. Gentlemen, thank you for coming through today. That's our discussion here on the Zimbabwe elections, and we had in the studio, as you saw, political strategist at Zanu PF, that's Acie Lumumba, and Tino Mambeu, as you said, an independent political analyst, giving us a different perspective on that. Gentlemen, thank you.